Stetson Bennett throws 4 interceptions but leads the Rams to victory in their first preseason game. We got big takeaways. That's coming up next on Locked On Rams.
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Ramily, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Rams, your daily podcast covering your Los Angeles Rams. Free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On Rams, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're also available over on YouTube, so if you haven't yet, do us a huge favor and subscribe to the Locked On Rams YouTube channel, trying to get to 14K before opening kickoff. Also, let us know down below, what are your big takeaways from the Rams preseason win over the Cowboys? My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAC_LA. I've been covering LA sports for over a decade. SI 24/7 Sports, Dodgers Nation, the Rams for Locked On. And as always, I'm joined by the Rams pre-half and post-game show host for the Rams flagship radio station, ESPN 710 LA. He just began his 9th season covering your Los Angeles Rams, the People's Champ, Mr. Travis Rogers. You can follow him on X at Travis Rogers. And on today's episode, big takeaways from the Rams' first preseason game. Stetson Bennett struggles and makes the big game-winning touchdown throw at the end. We're going to break it all down. But first, today's episode of Locked On Rams is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Okay, Travis, so we are Darrell Henderson days away from opening kickoff, getting closer and closer. Yesterday, a major step, the first preseason game, and the entire conversation about the Rams this morning surrounds Stetson Bennett. Now, it was his first time with live game action over a year. He played in the preseason last season, but missed the entire season, was not with the team for unrelated issues. And yesterday, there was some good. He was 24 for 38, goes for 224 yards, had the game-winning touchdown at the end where he's rolling to his left, throws back across his body, hits Miller Forstall with 4 seconds. Joshua Carty boots the extra point and give the Rams the win. But, man, some bad throws, 4 interceptions. Definitely a concern when you consider the fact that he'll be, right now, the Rams' backup quarterback for the first 2 games with Jimmy Garoppolo suspended.
Yeah, I think that's the big takeaway, right, D-Mac? I think the biggest takeaway of game 1 of the preseason against the Dallas Cowboys is wrap Matthew Stafford in bubble wrap for sure. Do not let him get anywhere near a dangerous situation, and cross your fingers, toes, and everything else you got that the first 2 weeks of the season he stays on his feet. Obviously, you want him to go through all 17 games healthy. That would be ideal, but in particular, in those first 2 games, because Jimmy Garoppolo is unavailable for games 1 and 2, serving his PED suspension. Stetson Bennett had a nice play at the end. That's the list of things he did well. And then the rest of it was really rough, and it did not look of NFL quality for a variety of different reasons. I'm glad that he is back. I'm glad that he's working his way back to a role, whether it's with this team or another team or somewhere else. I guess if we're creating a little bit of grace for him, which we all deserve, is that it has been 351 days since he had played in a football game prior. So that's a long time. That's a lot of rust to knock off. But it does feel like if he were required to enter a game in those first 2 weeks of the season, and by the way, and we can talk about this as we move through it, I'm not so sure he's even going to get the opportunity to do that. But we'll talk about that coming up in a little bit. But I don't think you can put him in an NFL game seeing what you saw yesterday.
That's really what it comes down to, is the bottom line. He has to be better than he was yesterday to get any consideration to be the backup quarterback. And I see people out there, why are we talking about a third-string quarterback? He's a third-string quarterback. Yes, he's a third-string quarterback. That's going to be the second-string quarterback for the first couple weeks of the season, with Matthew Stafford, a quarterback that has gotten banged up in the past. And look, I understand the fact that, this team loses Matthew Stafford, their season's over no matter what. But still, you can't have a quarterback like Stetson Bennett having those interceptions the way he had them, poor reads, the vision down the field, the fourth interception, not seeing the underneath man in that situation, the happy feet. I think the understanding of Sean McVay's offense wasn't clear. And I think what really struck me was just the lack of field vision throughout the day, the happy feet in the pocket. I think he's most comfortable when he is bouncing out, the play that he did make to win the game. But when he's in the pocket, occasionally you'll see him make a nice throw. I mean, a couple balls to Jordan Whittington here and there. But for the most part, yeah, he did struggle throughout the day. And like you said, you got to give him some grace. There's no doubt about it when you definitely point out that, yes, he did miss significant time. But let's not forget, too, he did lead all quarterbacks last preseason in turnover-worthy plays. So turnovers are an issue, and that's just not what you want to see from a backup quarterback. A guy that's throwing interceptions. You want to have someone go out there and just kind of manage the offense, not hurt the team. When you go out there and throw 4 picks, you're hurting the team.
Yeah, look, like you said, D-Mac, that once you get to week 3 against San Francisco, this isn't an issue anymore because we're not going to talk about the third string quarterback. You know, if you're down to QB3, then we all know what that means and, you know, whatever at that point, I guess. But he's not QB3. He's QB2 for at least the first 2 weeks of the season, potentially. I like what you said. I think he's one of those guys that is better served creating than trying to do what has been called. The problem is in the NFL, that's the backwards order, right? It's nice if you can make things happen off schedule, but you have to make things happen on schedule. And I think that was the most alarming part for those 4 interceptions, which, by the way, could have been 5 had one not been called back for a penalty. And that is, he was not under duress. He had relatively clean pockets. Mina Kimes mentioned this on the broadcast yesterday, that it wasn't just that he was throwing interceptions, is that he was throwing interceptions without having a ton of pressure. These were interceptions for one of 2 reasons, basically. 1, a bad throw, or 2, a bad read, or maybe a combination of the 2. That's a problem. You know, like you said, this is something that I guess could be cleaned up a little bit. There is basically about a month, like you said at the top, before they play that first game of the season. So you'd expect it to get a little better. I'm curious as to what it's going to look like against the Chargers here on Saturday afternoon. But, you know, you're talking about turnovers in the red zone, which absolutely can happen. And that felt a lot like what we saw with Brett Rippon a year ago in Green Bay, where you're just looking at saying, yeah, this doesn't work. You got to think about what you're going to do other than this. I think he'll get another chance against the Chargers, but I wouldn't be surprised if QB2, or at least for the first 2 weeks, is not on this team right now. He's working out with another squad.
Yeah, and we'll touch on that for sure in the next segment here. What will the Rams do with Stetson Bennett? Because he's going to get his opportunities, and that's the good thing if you're him, is you can chalk it up to the fact that, yeah, it was rough. I also led you to the game-winning drive with just under 3 minutes to play in the game, and I did show some awareness there. But for the most part, as you point out, the fact that he did have protection, he did have time to make plays, but he was throwing into heavy coverage. He was forcing things. He was trying to make completions when there just wasn't anything available, throwing into 3 and 4 defensive backs. That's just not what you wanted to see. And look, maybe he just wanted to make a statement early on, but I've never seen a player that has that much confidence, despite the fact that he's going out there and throwing interceptions. And also the beautiful thing is, how about this? You throw 4 interceptions, could have thrown 6. As you mentioned, one was brought back due to a holding penalty, and you still outdueled Trey Lance. So, and the Cowboys. So good for Stetson Bennett. How about that, right? But we're going to continue to break this one down. We're going to talk about what the Rams could do if they need to look for another backup quarterback, a potential third-string quarterback as well. That's coming up next on Locked On Rams.
When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role, right? It's not just filling the role, it's finding the right person for that role. Think about what we just talked about. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. Honestly, it's kind of what we were just talking about. It's not just that there is a vacancy, but is it the right person to fill said vacancy, to take your team to the next level, to backstop some things that you have? And that's why LinkedIn's so important, because it's not just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire the professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to a perfect role. in a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users do not visit other job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place, because on LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
And we are off and running here on Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday. Free and available wherever you get your podcast. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Also, a special shout out to those every listeners out there watching and listening to every single episode of Locked On Rams. We appreciate you, and you should definitely join the Everyday Listeners Club too. Season is about to begin, and you won't want to miss a thing about your Los Angeles Rams. All right, so we're going to pick up on the Stetson Bennett conversation in segment 2, Travis. And I think really what it comes down to is based on what you saw in the first preseason game, where he just struggled to make his way through progressions and just make the right throws and just avoid big turnovers. Do you think that there's enough ground he can make up in the next 2 games where you feel comfortable with him as your backup quarterback for Matthew Stafford, with Jimmy Garoppolo set to miss those first 2 games? I think for me, it's a tough ask. I think you definitely give another opportunity to see if you can clean up some of those mistakes. But right now, I think the Rams absolutely have to be having those tough conversations in that building, really breaking down this tape and seeing that, hey, can a guy who, yes, he pulled out the win, definitely was a great moment there, but do you trust him in that situation moving forward in the regular season?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things going on here. Number one, the preseason for the Rams, which is typically just a slog to get to the regular season because they don't play anybody that you're all that excited to see. There's a few exceptions here or there. It just got a little more interesting because of the quarterback situation, that there really is something to keep an eye on and to evaluate moving forward. I think that's number one. Number two is, and I think what you said, Doug, is really important, I should say, is because there was a big play at the end of the game that allowed them to win, and it was exciting, and it really was a very, very nice throw and a nice play, like you said, rolling left, throwing right, kind of sidearm sliding catch that was a nice way to end an otherwise dreadful day. But I think the first part of that is what's most important. It was a dreadful day. That 4 interceptions against vanilla defenses, against guys on the Cowboys that are probably not going to play a ton of NFL football. They weren't playing very many of their guys either. A 4 interception day is really hard to say, it's just one of those things. It's not. There's more runway to check this out. We'll see what it looks like. I do like that he played the entire game. I would expect him to play a good chunk of the game against the Chargers on Saturday afternoon, but I just don't want that touchdown pass at the end to overshadow what had happened previously. Much like the opposite would be true. If he went out there and threw 4 touchdown passes in the game and then just threw a really bad pass at the end for an interception to lose it, you wouldn't be like, oh, what a disaster. It would be, no, look at the 4 touchdowns he threw. That's really good. This is true too. The 4 interceptions are far more meaningful than anything else you saw. And again, Matthew Stafford is the backbone of this team. He is the team. So if he's down for any period of time, you're in deep, deep trouble. We're talking about a 2-week window where you need somebody to be there to backstop him. You would more than likely going to be okay in this situation. But in the event you're not, I don't think he's the answer.
Yeah, and Travis, that's the big question for me, like you said, is how do they frame this thing? Do they frame it as the exclamation point at the end where he led you to a game-winning drive where he had to complete 8 passes on that drive? That's impressive. Is it the exclamation point at the end or the question marks before that? And if you look at the 9 drives he had, 2, they made field goals, 2 ended in punts, 4 ended in interceptions. And you look at that ratio, you look at those numbers, that definitely doesn't inspire a ton of confidence. But yeah, to say he was rusty earlier in this game was an understatement. Sure. But for me, it's a combination of there's some mechanic issues. Like when you look at the mechanics of the happy feet, the inability to kind of read defenses in those possessions in the pocket, and then the forced throws, he's going to have to make a dramatic improvement to earn that job for me. And then if you're the Rams and you look at where they're sitting at salary cap wise, $11.8 million under the cap, teams basically need $10 to $15 million for an entire season as far as practice players and everything you need to make in-season moves to really feel comfortable there. So the Rams aren't going to love the idea of bringing in someone else, and you kind of set to see what happens at other camps to see who comes available. But right now, it's either they're kind of stuck with him or really not too many options.
Yeah, look, we're talking about a third-string quarterback at the end of the day. So there's not a ton of flexibility. It's not like all of a sudden you're going to a quarterback that you would love to have on your team is going to shake loose at the end of camp. That's not what we're talking about. The question is there somebody, you're ready for this? You know who might be an option in this situation, as terrifying as it might be? Brett Rippon. Like, Brett Rippon knows what you're doing. He knows the system. He could cover. Brett Rippon was better than that. Brett, peace out. I get it. Brett Rippon, while bad against the Packers, he didn't throw 4 picks. As bad as that game was, they had a chance to win that game into the second half. You're not going to do it with 4 interceptions. Again, hopefully this is never something we talk about once we get to the start of the season against the Lions, but somebody that just a 0 that you give nothing but take nothing is far better than what you got yesterday.
Yeah, and at that point, I mean, I just rather see Dresser win. And if Dresser win starts any of these games, it might be a key indication that Stetson Bennett is done. But I think the fact that there wasn't a lot of pressure, and he did make some impressive throws out there. I definitely want to point that out. It's just that he made a lot of bad throws because of bad decisions. So he is capable of making better throws than Wolford or Bryce Perkins at times or Brett Rippon. I think that his best throws are better than all 3 of those guys. It's just the decision-making is so bad. It almost felt like a guy that was really saying, okay, you have one game to show us what you got and what you missed. And he was kind of forcing things and forcing the issue when he really didn't need to yesterday. So maybe if you can kind of settle him down, look at the tape, look at the happy feet, look at some of the decision-making, give him another opportunity. You can say, okay, this is a third-string quarterback. I think it's important to emphasize that, and that, hey, this is someone you trade up for, you got in the 4th round. So they definitely believed in him. And there's a little bit of a sunk cost fallacy with Stetson Bennett. No one wants to take the L on him if it doesn't work out. But I still think they're going to give him a couple more opportunities. And the biggest thing for him was coming through in the end, having something to build on.
Ish. Look, the preseason NFL is the only time where the result of the game doesn't matter. Right. Yeah. It just simply doesn't matter. They won the game, by 4 touchdowns, or they won the game like they did. It really doesn't matter. What does it look like? And I would rather a guy give me a bunch of D's looking at you, Brett Rippon, than a guy that gives me 12 F's and then turns in an A at the last day of the class, right? Just give me the D. I know what I'm getting. I know what I'm dealing with a bunch of D's. But a bunch of F's and 1 A doesn't really, it scares me more than anything else, because you keep expecting the A to come back. It's not coming back. It's just, hopefully this isn't an issue. Hopefully we never have to talk about this person, whoever the QB3 is, coming into a game that we actually care and need to win.
I agree with you that the scoreboard doesn't matter, but I do think the play mattered, because why you went and drafted Stetson Bennett, because he has that dog, that gamer's mentality. And you saw that on display during that last play. Rolling to your left, throwing across your body to Miller Forstall. And here's the thing. To say it didn't matter would be like, okay, if he throws a pick there, an interception there, then I don't think there's any positives that you can truly draw from yesterday, other than kind of some of those throws to Jordan Whittington. I mean, you would have had to change his last name to Stetson Bennett the 4th to Stetson Bennett the 5th, and the V stands for 5 picks, right? So you couldn't have had that if you're him. So I do think that's how the organization and Sean McVay, because McVay wants to spin a positive with this. They don't want they're focused on the big picture, man. They're focused on Braden Fisk and Jared Verse and all these defensive issues and everything, the offensive line getting healthy, and now they're really the conversation about a third-string quarterback. So I don't think that they want to make this the main area of focus, but I definitely agree with you that the overall results don't matter. But I think at least you had something to build on, and you can kind of chalk the first part up as rust and the need for improvement.
My favorite tweet of the afternoon was the one that said Stetson Bennett has thrown 4 interceptions. Only 4 was in Roman numerals. That was my favorite tweet of the day that I saw yesterday. So we'll leave it at that.
Killing me, man. But hey, we'll definitely see some more Stetson Bennett in the Rams' second preseason game. But a positive takeaway about yesterday, Jordan Whittington certainly looks like he's going to be a dude for your Los Angeles Rams. That's coming up next on Locked On Rams.
Passion, drive, and patience. That's the formula for winning championships. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. They've got superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and a whole lot more. So whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you will always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers.
And welcome back to Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday. Free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, so a major positive yesterday was the performance of Jordan Whittington, the former Texas Longhorn receiver. The Rams picked in the 6th round, caught 6 passes for 74 yards in the win, all coming in the first half. I've been high on Jordan Whittington. I don't think he's going to be the star that Puka Nacua is. I don't think he's going to be a future star or future superstar, but I think he's going to be a future starter. I think that is the potential for him. Love the dog, love the physicality. What'd you think of Jordan Whittington, Travis?
I thought he was great. I mean, full stop. I thought he was terrific. You know, I'll flip the coin. And, you know, when I said that what Stetson Bennett put out there was not of NFL quality, Jordan Whittington was of NFL quality. That looked like an NFL player. That looked like somebody you could put in an NFL game tomorrow and feel pretty good about it. That's a huge win for what they did. My partner, Kirk Morrison, who I've done the pre and the post with for all 9 seasons that we've been doing this, I thought brought up a really good point yesterday when we were talking about Whittington, which is because he was at Texas and Texas was loaded with so many weapons. And keep in mind, Texas went to the Final Four last year. They were a really good football team. That he kind of got lost in the shuffle a little bit, that he wasn't the number one option, that he had been at some other places, maybe he would have gotten more balls. Maybe he would have gotten more opportunities, more looks, put up bigger numbers, and been drafted a lot higher than ultimately where he ended up being drafted. That I think the Rams have really found themselves a nice player. We know how important depth is at the wide receiver position over the course of an NFL season. And everything I saw yesterday from Jordan Whittington makes you feel really good that the Rams found to your point, D-Mac, maybe it's not an all-pro like they found with Puka Nacua last year, or an all-pro like they drafted Cooper Kupp several years ago, but it does look like they found themselves an NFL player in the 6th round, which is a huge win.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned his time at Texas. He was a 5-star when he headed to Austin, and Sarkisian spoke extremely highly of him, and they were definitely stacked as far as their wide receiver room. He did make some big plays against Washington there in the CFP, so definitely he did perform on the biggest stage, and he definitely has that in him. And I just love the toughness in the hands and his ability to get open. I think the play that really stood out to me was there in the second quarter. He makes that catch, and Thomas for the Cowboys just absolutely lit him up. Essentially, it was a blindside hit, and he catches it. No difficulty at all. Just completely makes the play and was unfazed by it. Gets up in the Rams sideline. They're celebrating. They're juiced. They're going crazy about it. So definitely he kind of brings that juice on the field and can make big and tough plays. And look, the truth of the matter is, doesn't matter where you picked him up in the late rounds. The bottom line, he was a 6th-round pick, and anytime you're a 6th-round pick, you're not a guarantee to make that 53-man roster. After yesterday, after what Sean McVay was saying after the game, there's no doubt about it. He is going to make this 53-man roster, and he's not on the bubble or anything like that.
Well, think about this. I think you're going to know right away he's not going to play next week, right? And that'll tell you all you need to know about the fact that he's going to be a part of what they have moving forward. And he absolutely checks every box in the LA Ram wide receiver checklist, right? Think about it. Played a lot of football. He's a 5-year guy out of Texas. The Rams love to draft guys that have been in and around football for a long time. They don't go young. They tend to skew a little older when they take guys. This is a big opportunity for Jordan Whittington. He fits the mode of big physical wide receiver. Maybe he's not a burner like a lot of guys, but tell me he doesn't remind you a little of Puka, a little bit of Cooper Kupp. Think about all the great Ram wide receivers, whether they've been drafted or acquired. They're all tough. Robert Woods was tough. Brandon Cooks was tough. Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua. These guys are tough football players, and Whittington certainly falls into that mode too.
Absolutely. He pursues contact, and that's definitely is something that is kind of a badge of honor for these Rams receivers throughout the years. And even though he doesn't have that blazing speed, can make catches in open spaces, can find those little nooks and find a way to just get those routes in where he can go and get you a big first down. So, yeah, I was extremely excited to see him perform like he did yesterday, and definitely a bright spot for the Rams in their first preseason game. But we got more big takeaways tomorrow. We're going to break down the Rams preseason game and who stood out, because on the defensive side, we had some guys definitely make a statement. But the Rams, they beat the Cowboys in their first preseason game, 1-0 on the preseason. Stetson Bennett had his struggles, but lots to talk about here, guys. Feels like football season is finally here on Locked On Rams, so be sure to tune in. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAC_LA. And you can follow the People's Champ, Mr. Travis Rogers, at Travis Rogers. And until next time, whose house? It's Locked On Rams house.